some were done at different time periods. September of 2019. Oh, I'm sorry, August of 2019.
School wasn't in session August of 2019. I think there'd be a very big impact in the amount of traffic going through those intersections in August. If you were to take those numbers in September or April, I think you'd probably double, triple, or quadruple the number of cars going through that intersection. Another thing I have is talk about...
Sir, hold on. Your answer, Nicole, to what the gentleman
We
said?
followed the township's criteria, which requires traffic counts to be completed on Thursday or Friday, April through November.
Okay, another question. Did you take any kind of tests other than the minimum required as far as traffic ratings and traffic numbers going through those intersections, or did you just do what was minimally required?
We went through a scoping process, so it isn't speaking to that we did the minimum requirements. We did what we were asked to do.
Well, you minimally had to do. Okay. When you talk about 95 seconds, does that talk about when the car gets to the light and gets through the intersection, or does that talk about when the car gets into the queue and spends the 15 minutes getting to the intersection?
It evaluates the time that a vehicle is stopped, and that is including in a queue.
So there's no way of telling how long that car has waited when they turned onto their side road onto 926 to get to that intersection?
The analysis that we're required to do does not evaluate individual vehicle delay. It evaluates average vehicle delay over the course of the hour.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christine Lisi, I'm Westtown Township resident at 915 Shady Grove Way. I too believe that property owners should have the right to do as they wish, just like I believe I have a constitutional right, as do the 100+ people that showed up here tonight. There are plenty of stories of toll brothers in the news, and they're not good. But I also want to point out, speaking of traffic, is they did a huge cluster development like this in Newtown Square, and the roads are not wide enough for a car to be parked on the road and an emergency vehicle to get by. So I'm just wondering, we're talking about traffic studies which are focusing on the major intersections, but for the people who don't know better and think, oh, I want to move to Chester County, and they see this beautiful property and they want to live there, I'm just wondering if they are even cognizant of what they're buying into when it comes to school buses, emergency vehicles, construction vehicles. Those are a lot of big vehicles that are going to have to try to squeeze by a car that may park on the road. And I'm just wondering if the Planning Commission is actually looking at the width of the roads within this cluster development.
Chrissy, hold on a second. Andrew, Greg.
Yeah, I can address that. The current plan meets the current ordinances, including their saldo, which has a minimum of 24 foot wide, and I believe our collector road, if I'm not mistaken, is 28 feet wide. In regard to the development in Newtown Square, that was done before Toll Brothers was involved, and the township provided a special overlay and allowed that type of design. That was done long before Toll Brothers was involved.
So have these interior roads, not the connected road, but the interior roads been tested so that they are wide enough for a car to be parked on the road, because people park on the road even though they should be parking in their driveway, they just don't, and enough space for an emergency vehicle or construction or school bus to get by?
I can't speak specifically to the ordinance, but the design of the plan was per both zoning and salvo ordinances. And if I'm not mistaken, 24 foot wide road allows parking on one side and will allow emergency vehicles to pass.
Okay, thank you.
Patrick McDonough, 7 Oakland Road, West Township. I noticed in your most recent plan, you've eliminated that, I guess the road running east-west towards 202. It was the connector road from connector road to 202. That's been eliminated, correct?
That's correct.
And was the 2 historic houses, the 19th century houses, located in that site torn down to allow for that connector road?
I'm not exactly sure what you're speaking of.
There were two 19th century homes that were on that site that the Westtown Historic Commission was trying to save. And when Toll Brothers came in ownership and agreement with the Robinson family, that one of those houses was actually featured in the Westtown Gazette as a historic commission was trying to save. It was a 19th century Carpenter Gothic serpentine house. And the township was actually trying to save it, and I think Mr. Robinson here was actually probably was almost going to give it to the township for $1. However, it fell through once the plan was heavily thought at. And so my question is, was those two buildings torn down to accommodate the connector road, or they were just torn down? What was the reason for those two buildings being torn down?
I was not involved and am unaware of what homes were exactly there. And in regard to the location of the access to 202, it was further north, closer to the property with Westminster Church.
Okay. So I'll tell you what the reason that we were given, the township was given, was because the two buildings were a public safety hazard. The homeowner or the ownership of the property was basically demolition by neglect, essentially. So the two buildings, when the one building was featured in the Westtown Gazette, that was winter of 2015. A month later, Mr. Robinson applied for a demolition permit. A month later after that, the two buildings were torn down. So my question to you, there's another, not a historic house, but there's another house that's been on 926, a framed house that has a tree been leaning on it for probably about 4 years. And that building has remained intact even while those two very structurally sound historic homes were torn down. So I'm surprised to learn, and I'm wondering whether that building, that frame building, is going to be torn down too, because it's a safety hazard as well.
Our current proposal is to demolish that building.
Okay, but there's no current plan to demolish it currently in the next 6 months.
Not to my knowledge.
So given the history of these three historic buildings, my concern is this plan taking account of the Historic Commission's recommendations for the other historic property, or historic structures on the property?
I can tell you, currently our plan provides for keeping the Westtown Inn, which is at the southeastern corner, right at 202 and 926. We are also proposing to save the existing barn that you can see from 926, right behind the sign over the driveway that says Crebilly. There is also a chapel in the general vicinity of the barn that you can see from 926, and we are also proposing to save the existing horse stables.
I guess my last question would be, I see that the Robinson property has been separated from this development. In the future, if Mr. Robinson sees these houses going up and decides, shoot, I don't want to look at these anymore, can he subdivide his property and put more houses in there? Or is that part of the Toll Brothers development?
No, he would not be able to do that.
Okay, so he would not be able to subdivide that property?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Henry Hill, 39 Millrace Place. I'd like to just respond. I don't have a question, but I do have a response to something that's been said a lot at these hearings by Toll Brothers representatives, and that is property rights. The zoning, as far as I know, for this property is the by right zoning, what's allowed to be built by zoning right, is like 110 or 115 houses. So this is not about property rights as much as it's about Toll being able to come to your town, bring their circus in, and make as much money as possible off the people who live in this town. It's not about property rights. If this were about property rights, they'd have a plan on that screen for 110 houses, not 319. So the conditional use application is a little trick of the municipal planning code, which was largely written by developers and their attorneys. It is not written by citizens who have the interest of their town at heart. It's written by developers. And they're invoking a little trick of the municipal planning code to hold this township hostage. And so shame on Toll, shame on the people who work for Toll.
I'd like to respond to that.
Sir, I don't think you know the first thing about the municipality's planning code. Conditional use is a by right use. So if you actually knew anything about what you were talking about, you wouldn't be making those statements. We're here for a by right development. Conditional use is imposed when there may be additional impacts of a by right use. That allows a township to evaluate those uses. That's why we're here this evening. So Toll's not playing any tricks. This wasn't a developer-written ordinance or a developer-written statute. We're here to comply with the law.
We have about 4 minutes left. I'll start with you, sir, and then Myron. Go ahead, sir.
Real easy question. Are you willing to share your traffic counts data?
Yes, it's public. Everything's submitted, and it should actually be online. I think they're all online now as well. So they should be on the website.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mark? Yeah, hit it.
Iron Blue Watching 24 Dunvegan Road. In all these, both of these plans have been submitted. There's never been talk of having an access road onto New Street because the Robinsons want their seclusion. You got two access roads on Dunvegan, one of which is right about the place where it necks down, and I about get clobbered there every morning at 6:05 in the morning when I go through and there's a truck on the street. I don't know where he's going because I see him all the time, and then the deer are standing on the side of the road. Why can't we get one of those roads deleted off of Pleasant Road and a road put on the New Street? Now, I understand that would change the traffic patterns and the traffic mitigation that's been proposed by the township in the last couple of weeks, but why can't we get a road onto New Street?
Sure. First of all, there is an access. It's an emergency access.
Exactly.
It's
not
shown there.
public access.
It's not a public access, and we did that deliberately in order to try to keep that western portion of the property undeveloped. Not because of the Robinsons, but because of all the discussions that we've had with respect to what historic significance, if any, have occurred on the western part of that property. So we also don't believe sending traffic directly out to New Street is a good thing. We believe that the way the traffic has been detailed in the prior application and this application is a better way to distribute traffic.
Have you been on New Street at 5:30 in the afternoon trying to get to 926?
No, I've been on 926.
It's backed up
but
to
not
New
New Street.
Sellers, new house.
I'm sure.
Myron, you have another question on the way?
The land, the open space originally included water basins, the drip field, and all that. Does the new plan still include all those unusable spaces in the open space provision?
There's provisions in the ordinance that allow for a certain percentage of basins that infiltrate, as well as allowing for drip areas to be included in total open space there.
The answer to the question is yes.
The ordinance permits it, yes.
Well, I just asked, is it part of it?
Yes, the ordinance permits it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end. The minutes of this meeting will be posted on the Westtown Township website. The next meeting will be Monday, October 21st at 7:30. And please direct all questions to Will Etheridge. I'm sure he's looking forward to your questions. At 692-1930. And if you need his email address, it's right here. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.